les traigo un mensaje a todos los mexicanos. Permítanme presentarles a mis queridos hermanos. Algunos vienen unidos con toditos familiares.
This is your host, Gabe Morales, returning back for the top 10, the Nuestra Familia of all time. Number 6 will be Eddie Adrian Crackers Vindiola, who I described in my Fresno Bulldogs video at length, as he was a key figure in the Nuestra Familia, as well as in the split that led to many F-14s, or Fresno Norteños, identifying as Bulldogs. Crackers was born on February 11, 1949, and hailed from San Bernardino County as well as Fresno County. He was present when MA leader Cheyenne Cadena was killed in 1972. As official CDC reports show, Cadena did not walk calmly to his death, but was surprise attacked and outflanked as he exited his cell. On December 17, 1972, during afternoon release, at approximately 13:05 hours, that'd be 1:05 p.m. for you civilians, Rodolfo Cheyenne Cadena was hit on the second tier in Palm Hall, not the third. He was stabbed 50 times and thrown over the tier by NF members Joker Mendoza and Manzanas Apocolon. NF Lieutenant Gary Chingon Silva from San Diego was close to Crackers, as the picture above shows. By 1974, law enforcement started to identify the F-14 gang out on the streets of Fresno, as I described in my Fresno Bulldog video. Between 1976 and 1979, the NF was responsible for at least 28 murders in Fresno County alone. Because of this bloodbath in Fresno, many F-14 decided to split from the organization. Contrary to what I've heard some say, there would have been an NF without Crackers Vindiola. In fact, the NF was created around 1965. He was only 16 years old then, and not an original NF member. However, Crackers did have heavy influence on instituting the first documented NF regiment in Fresno. Crackers was considered to be a captain in charge of establishing it. Assisting him was Ruben Carnica and Ruben Ceja Guerrero, and his brothers Juan and Jesse were NF associates. But Crackers was later told he had to give the Fresno keys to fellow NF shot caller Sammy Venegas. However, due to some problems with the Nuestra Familia in Fresno area, Sammy Venegas dropped out and had problems with the organization after they killed his brother Guadalupe Lupe Venegas on January 6, 1976. In December 1977 and 1980, the NF tried to take Sammy out. He convinced his brother Joe Cucaracho Venegas to leave with him to defect from the organization. By 1982, the ongoing problems between the F-14 and the NF caused many Fresneros to leave the Nuestra Familia at San Quentin, and they started a council. This development happened 1984 to 1986. In 1987, many of the Fresno Bulldogs were moved to New Folsom Prison, where I worked. Like I said in the Bulldog video, Crackers did not start the Bulldogs. However, they probably would have never flourished had he not given them their blessing. And he put on Bulldog tattoos on his front shoulders. But it is interesting to me that he kept his Nuestra Familia tattoo down both sides of his back. Crackers died in good standing with the Fresno Bulldogs, and even was respected by many Norteños in Nuestra Familia. James Tibbs Morado Contreras was born on January 22nd, 1948. January 22nd just so happens to be the anniversary date of the northern structure Nuestra Raza. Tibbs claimed Hanford, a small town in the central San Joaquin Valley, and he is said to have joined the Marines. It is my understanding that Tibbs was short for Tiberius Caesar, as he had a knack for knowing history and was quite sophisticated in his intelligence. He was validated as an NF member in the late 1970s and is said to committed a murder while in custody. I encountered him at New Folsom Beef Facility in early 1987, and according to Dimas Diablo de Leon, who was housed in B4 unit in the late 1980s, he describes getting instructions from Tibbs to get his haircut in a diamond-shaped Mongol haircut. This is where the head is shaved except for a ponytail at the back top. This was done so the Nuestra Familia and northern structure could easily identify each other. In similar fashion, the Sureños would often shave their heads to help recognize each other during battle out on the yards. Tibbs sent word throughout the CDC and at Corcoran when it opened in 1988 that there would be no peace with the MA or Sureños. Krista Morado, the young wife of Tibbs Morado, was murdered In January 2005 under foul play. Her body was found in an isolated area. According to former MNF member Rojo, Tibbs was well respected at Pelican Bay. He was named in the Black Widow RICO case and sent to the feds and housed at the ADX with other NF heavyweights. And he got along well with them, as is seen in this picture with Corny, Tristan, and Tex Hernandez to his left and Cuete Rubalcaba to his right. When the California faction and federal factions feuded over making peace with the MA and Sureños, I heard that Tibbs was the sole voice suggesting that maybe they should work it all out and that it was causing too many problems within the organization. This was considered treasonous by Corny and Skip. Tibbs tried to get a medical compassion release due to health problems, but was denied. However, he was moved from the ADX to McCreary BOP high security facility in eastern Kentucky. Unfortunately for him, a scandalous and dangerous NF, Gerald Cuete Rubalcaba, followed him there and hit Tibbs in May 2021, who died a few months later from his injuries. So here's a lesson for you youngsters. Tibbs, according to most, was very much a stand-up guy and loyal to the organization. He had few controversies except for the murder of Crystal. Here was a guy who dedicated over 40 years of his life to an organization who threw him out like the trash, no second thoughts. There is no loyalty in such an organization, and everybody is expendable. Don't forget that. Corny Tristan is a relatively young NF member, being born on March 25th, 1961. He has Native American blood and claimed Woodland, California, a small town located just north of Sacramento, where I used to live. His criminal career started out at the age of 12, and when he had often huffed spray paint or glue and often got into trouble. At the age of 15, he robbed a taxi cab driver and killed him, which landed him at the Dual Vocational Institute in Tracy, even though he was still a juvenile, being only 16 years old. It was at DVI that the NF had a stronghold, and Corny was recruited into the O. And like many lifer convicts, became a good artist, having hours of idle time in his cell to draw. On October 26, 1978, TS member and Babo Sosa car supporter Francisco Padilla was killed and stabbed over 100 times. A young Corny Tristan was charged but beat the DA's case, and he denies ever having been involved. But in January of 1981, Art Tibon Lozoya, also a Sosa supporter, was killed by Corny and Alfonso Papi Reina from the Chino Centers. Corny is credited as being one of the prime authors of the XIV bonds while he was housed at Old Folsom 4A in the early 1980s. It is said to have been written in late 1983 and pushed out to the main lines in January 1984. Tristan became a future NF general and gained status with the O, but not without drama. Art Smiley Ramirez was in charge of the Salinas Regiment and waged war against Corny Tristan and the overall governing body when he was at Pelican Bay. This is referred to as the D facility dilemma. There's also some problems with some of the generals at that time wanting to make peace with La M, while others like Corny were against it. Finally, Corny won out and became a general. In 2001, Operation Black Widow charged multiple NF members, including Corny, in a RICO case, and they were convicted and sent to the feds. It is interesting to me that Corny did not have a Nuestra Familia tattoo when Black Widow first started. I have booking shots of all the players involved in that case, and Corny did not have this tattoo, but later got his NF symbol blasted all across his front while at the ADX. Corny has been described as soft-spoken and laid back, but is obviously a dangerous and powerful individual. Joseph Pinky Hernandez was born on October 10, 1949, and is from the old school before the north-south lines were drawn, as I previously explained. He claims Cucamonga, which is located in the Inland Empire in Southern California. While today the area is very urban and has rows and rows of fairly new housing, prior to the 1980s, this area was largely rural, with lots of agriculture and farm workers. On New Year's Eve 1978 into the early hours of 1979, future NF generals Vincent Chente Arroyo from the Chino Centers and Pinky escaped from the Kern County Jail, where they were being housed, due to a well-planned May 1977 hit attempts on NF founder Chalo Hernandez and his supporters, as discussed in Part 1 of the Top NF. By 1980, under a relatively new CDC validation system, Pinky was pegged as being an NF member. Carolyn Huerta of Castroville, California, eventually pled guilty to conspiring to traffic methamphetamine and communicating with her husband, Pinky, while he was housed at the ADX. The NF continued to use female couriers via letters and coded phone calls and during visits. Pinky exercised ultimate authority over the Salinas Regiment from his prison cell in Colorado through coded conversations. And he still exerts a lot of power as a longtime NF member and current general. Sheldon Skip Villanueva was born on October 9, 1962, and has been a key figure in the NF for decades. When the XIV bonds were written in late 1983 and kicked out to the main lines in 84, as I described in the Corny bio, Skip Villanueva and Dancing Bear Miramontes were assigned to help get the word out. Of course, Dancing Bear has been in bad standings for years. However, Skip only improved his reputation as he moved up the organization. In November 1990, Sheldon, Silent Lopez, and James Güero Trujillo met after San Jose drug dealer John Blanco accused rival dealer Tony Little Weasel Herrera of being an informant. Skip issued a green light. I may do a later episode on Operation Black Widow. There's just way too much information to share about that in this piece. However, Skip was a major player in Operation Black Widow and was very close to his right-hand man, Robert Ponyboy Mares, now deceased. During that case, Skip had run-ins with the Blancos, who were big-time PCP dealers in San Jose. When Skip and Ponyboy were sent to the feds, the first place they landed was Sheridan, Oregon. They quickly began organizing norteños, many from the Pacific Northwest, many well-known to me, and they were involved in riots with Sureños. For this behavior, they were both sent to Pollock in Louisiana, which was a high-security facility. But then they began doing the same thing there, having norteños, including those from other states. Again, several from the Pacific Northwest, including Washington State, in particular Yakima Valley, where I was born, putting in work for the NF. Eventually, Skip caught a murder case there of a Fresno Bulldog who was deemed no good. Now, often in the feds, Fresno Bulldogs can get along with norteños. But I understand this guy had a sex offense, and that gave Skip enough reason to take him out. Because of that case, Skip was sent to the ADX in Florence, Colorado, and it was my belief that that was his plan all along, to get a body and to get with the top brass. He was then made a general after the death of Tibbs Morado. Skip is believed to have supported the hit as Tibbs expressed sympathies with the California faction, as I mentioned previously. Corny and Skip convinced Pinky that it was still a bad idea to give any credit to the California faction, who had their own NF generals and captains running the show. But basically now it's just Corny, Pinky, and Skip in charge. And so there it is. Those are my top 10 West Familia of all time. Let me know if you have some others that you can think of and why that is in the comments section. Thanks for watching. This is Gabe Morales signing off for Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians.
Aquí les traigo un mensaje a todos los mexicanos.